We're ready.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just give a quick introduction. I'm not the star attraction, but I just wanted to thank everybody for joining. We are very grateful and happy that even though it wasn't, due to what's going on in Eretz Yisrael, we weren't able to do it in person. But we're still very grateful for Rabbi Brad that he's able to make it happen. I think it's like 2:30 in the morning by you. So we really appreciate that you still made the time for us. A lot of people I know were very excited about this, so thank you very much. And hopefully, because it's on Zoom, more people are able to attend, and it will be a positive thing instead of the opposite. To introduce Rabbi Brad, he's world famous with regards to helping a lot of shluchim, a lot of people in general. Essentially do what the Rebbe wanted, was something that the Rebbe was very passionate about, which is managing your time to the fullest and really grabbing the time and utilizing it to the best of your ability. I think, and the reason why we were inspired to do the class in general is, a lot of us are young parents or newly married in a very busy world, finding ourselves just surviving. And the goal of the class here is that we could start thriving instead of surviving. And I think this will be a good head start or a good start for a lot of people to realize that potential. And without further ado.
Okay, it is exciting to be able to still be connected, even though originally we were going to do this in person. But as you mentioned, because of the situation at Yisrael, I'd actually like to begin with Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah, so we could unite you guys in America, us here in Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to start with a very short vort of Torah. We learned this week about Avram, Zokin, Baba, Yomim, and the Zohar says Yomin Shleimin. Avram Avinu had full days. Each day in his life was a filled day, filled with accomplishments. He served Hashem all his life. So the Rebbe asks, there was at least 3 years that he didn't yet recognize Hashem. According to other days, it's many more years, 48, even more than that. So how could he be called Yomin Shleimin, that all his days were filled, if at least for the first 3 years of his life he was struggling to figure out and find out who is in control, and until he came to recognize that there is a one Hashem in the world? The Rebbe basically explains that because those 3 years he was questioning and struggling and searching and wanting to get to the truth, and eventually he got to the truth, then those 3 years are also part of the Yomin Shleimin. They are considered filled days. So I think if we take that to the concept of time management is not something that you're going to master. It's not like, okay, you want to become an engineer, go spend 6 years in school. You want to become a doctor, go spend 8 years. You want to spend a lawyer, spend 4 years. After you spent those 3, 5, 7, 8 years, whatever amount of years you became that person you wanted to become. That's not the same with time management. Time management is a life struggle. What we're going to go through today is a whole bunch of direction of how to approach time management, but it's a continuous struggle. So I guess just like Avram Avinu, who was struggling those first few years of his life, trying to figure out who is in control of this world, it is considered Yomin Shleimin. I would also like to believe that, struggling with time management and eventually getting to a higher level of maximizing your time is already part of that fulfillment. So that was just a short Dvar Torah. I'm going to suggest that we all say together the kapitel of the Rebbe Kuf Chav Beis, Shir HaMalis LeDavid Samachti B'Emen Libei Sadnei Nelich. Ein Dei Soyer Agleinu B'Shoraich Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Abnuya Kir Shechubro LaYardov. Shesham Olu Shvatim Shiftei Yah Eidos LeYisrael L'Eidos Hashem Adonai. Yishama Yosh V'Kisas LeMishpat Kisas LeVeis David. Shalu Shloim Yerushalayim Yishloi Oyavoich. Yehi shalom b'chelach sharva b'nesoich, leman achai v'rei haraben nashalom bach, leman beis avnei leina vaksha teiv loch. And I prepared for myself already a little pushka over here, so you can all do the same. Put in some coins in the pushka, and we can get started. Being that this is the week of the Kinus HaShluchim, I'm reminded that Kinus HaShluchim actually started Tafshin Mem Daled. That was the first Kinus HaShluchim, but that was only for Shluchim from the United States and Canada. Mem Ches was the first international Kinus. So there were 4 years of Kinus HaShluchim just from United States and Canada. But what was very interesting, at the end of the Kinus Tafshin Mem Zayin, the Rebbe instructed us to connect to 3 countries in the world: Israel, Australia, and I don't remember the third country, but there should be a hookup. And there was a conversation in each country with some of the Chabad leadership in that country. And that was kind of a preparation towards next year's international Kinus. So I very much want to hope, believe, and pray that this mini get together from you guys in America and us here in Eretz Yisrael, and doing Torah Tefillah Zok is going to unite us all with Mashiach Tzidkeinu Teika from Yad Mamish. Okay, this lecture that we're starting now, which is it's going to be quite a while. It's a rather lengthy lecture, and I take it I'm not in a rush. You guys were told it's up to 3 hours. It's not going to be that long, but still, we're not in a rush. Is going to be divided into 3 parts. Part number 1 is going to be the understanding, why do we have to spend time to try to study, master the whole concept of time management? Why is it so relevant? Why is it so important? In addition to, of course, everybody feeling, that you may find a lot of time going to waste and you want to know how to maximize more time, but we're going to go a little deeper into the understanding, why is it so important? The second item is, the second part of this lecture is going to be more, we'll call it spiritual, intellectual, psychological, all taken from our sources, where we see how time management is a very, very important part of our lives. And finally, the third part is going to be the practicality. Now that we understand why it's so important, and we also understand the intellectual and psychological and emotional and spiritual aspect of time management, how do we bring it down to practical terms on a day-to-day basis? After each section, I will open it up for questions and answers. So if you have any questions while I'm speaking, have a pen and paper, jot it down, or on your computer, and we'll be ready for that later. Incidentally, being that you mentioned earlier, David, you mentioned earlier that the Rebbe, highlights so much the importance of time management. The Rebbe calls this concept Hatzlacha Bazman. In Hebrew, we would call it Nihul Zman, managing time. Nihul, management. Nihul Zman. The Rebbe calls it Hatzlacha Bazman. And it's very interesting that those words, Hatzlacha Bazman, I'm only guessing now, you can accept it or not, but I'm only guessing that it's similar to when we learn about Kiseitze la Milchama, apropos war in Israel, right? Kiseitze la Milchama al Oivecha. So from the Alter Rebbe, the question is asked by all the Rabbeim, why al Oivecha? Kiseitze la Milchama im Oivecha. You're going to battle, you're going to war with your enemy. Why on your enemy? Kiseitze la Milchama al Oivecha. And the Rebbe explains that when you go out to war and you enter the war knowing that you are going to be victorious, you are already al oivecha. That gives you the energy and the strength that you actually will succeed fighting against your enemy. And being that Teitzei LaMilchama is a daily challenge that we go out to war every day to conquer the world, knowing that we can conquer the world and we have that ability to do that, that already gives us the strength to be able to succeed. I'd like to believe that the reason why the Rebbe calls it Hatzlacha Bazman and not Nihul Zman, the Rebbe is saying you do have the ability to have that Hatzlacha. You can succeed with time management. So when we're going to get started now after this minor introduction, but I now want to start with the Dvar Torah that would usually start the beginning of the time management session, which is also very relevant to the concept of Hatzlacha Bazman. We know the first thing Hashem created the first day was Oir. So the Rabbi asks, why was Oir created the first day? There was nobody to benefit from Oir the first day. So why was Oir created the first day? Should have created some other items first, and then there would be somebody who could benefit from the Oir. Why was Oir created the first day? Furthermore, the Oir that was created the first day, Hashem right away hid it. He hid it, lost it, loving. So why this whole process? And it's a lengthy sikha, but I'm just going to give the nekudah shabadov, the essence of it. When you go to build a house, when a king goes to build a mansion, you first have to set the vision of what it is that you're looking to create. Only then can you start the process of building something. Obviously, you got to put together all the blueprints and the plans and the architectural drawings. But it all begins by first recognizing what is it that you want to accomplish. And being that the purpose of creation is Hashem's presence in this world, which is already our job. We are to bring that light into this world. So Hashem right away, the first day created Oir. To say this is the purpose of creation. But then he took it away and hid it and gave it over to us, to tzaddikim, amich kulam tzaddikim. We are now the ones to reveal this light in the world. This is, by the way, a very, very serious key element when it comes to time management. We find ourselves sometimes or many times doing a bunch of good things, but there's no real vision. What's the purpose of all this? What do we want to accomplish? Where are we headed? So if anybody wants to learn the entire sikha at length, it's in Parshas Bereishis, Chelik Yud. I think it's the second sikha there. Okay. This is going to be now section or part number 1 from this lecture. Reasons and need to specialize in time management. Specialize or study or master. Forgetfulness. How often does it happen that you go, ouch, I forgot something. And sometimes it's something important. Or sometimes it could be very important. And you kind of find yourself in real trouble because you forgot something. So, you may not necessarily connect it to time management, but it is very much connected to time management. Because if you know how to manage your time properly, and we're going to discuss later the practicality of it, you will not have this concept called forgetfulness. I have no time. I have no time. How many of you find yourself saying to yourself, to your spouses, to a colleague, to another member of the shul or someplace, you say, I'm sorry, I have no time. What do you have no time? What do you mean you have no time? If you're alive, you have time. So what means I have no time? But yet we live a whole life and we always find ourselves saying, I'm sorry, I have no time for this. What are we really saying by those words, I have no time? And how does that fall into the whole concept of time management, that you should have time? Or at least you should have time for what's really important and what's really part of your priority. You find a busy day and a spacious day, the ability to balance your time. Sometimes you find yourself very, very busy. And other days, you're almost like figuring out, so what am I supposed to do today? Or have so much extra time on my hands. That's a balance. When we're talking about balance, there's another crucial balance we all need to do. And that's personal, family, and community. Which incidentally, this is a concept which I'm sure you can find many, many books on. This is a concept which has been studied by professors at many universities over the years, all about proper balance. many executives, many hard people working, many entrepreneurs that are very much involved in the business world. How do you balance not forgetting about yourself and not forgetting about your family? And this is truly a very, very, very crucial issue. I give this lecture mostly to shluchim, and definitely among shluchim, it's a very, very challenging part of their life, because most shluchim, I don't say work 24/7, but they're committed 24/7. And you know, so weekdays and Shabbosim and Yomim Tovim, it's all the time. So how do you come to proper balance between all these three items: personal, family, and organizational? External disturbances and internal distractions. If you were to monitor how much of your time is being wasted either by external disturbances or your own shortcomings by spending time, who knows, surfing and you know, unfortunately, I'm guilty, like many now these days, in I won't say being glued to the news, but wanting to see all the time what's happening. And I mean, when I sit today with my screen on, I mean, not now, but all the day, there's a little box over there with the news, which is on silent, but I got to see where missiles are coming to, because every once in a while, see, like we had tonight about 9:30, 10, we had a siren in Kfar Chabad. Okay, time to run down to the shelter and be there for at least 10 minutes. But it's a very, very, very powerful time waster. Sometimes it's the external, somebody comes and wastes your time, and sometimes you're the one who is creating that you know, wasting of a lot of time, internal distractions. Unresolved tasks or unfinished tasks. You do something, you're almost completed, but you didn't complete it. And then that becomes like a tail hanging along your back because there's something you didn't finish with that task. And rather than taking a job and doing it right and starting with it and finishing with it, I mean, but this is probably the first time in 50 years Israel is determined to start the job and to finish the job, to literally mochi timcha zecher chamas from the earth completely. That's the first time they're, at least at now, they're still determined to finish it. But we all find ourselves in again, sometimes personal, family, organizational lives, that we do things, we do a lot of good things, but we never finish the task. Okay, the feeling of being overwhelmed. You wake up in the morning one day and you are absolutely overwhelmed. You don't know where to begin. There's so many things haunting at you or demanding your time, and there could be a whole bunch of good things. And again, it could be a combination of personal, family, organizational, one big mixture of everything. You are just super overwhelmed. How do you overcome that feeling of being overwhelmed? I'm going to pause here for 1 minute. And this is going to be the only tip I'm going to give you today, because we're not talking about tips. What we're going to learn today is a full system. But I am going to use this one item as a tip, only because even when you're trying to master time management, there's going to be ups and downs and ups and downs. And still a way to a very important one tip that I'm going to share with you right now. If you ever find yourself totally overwhelmed, whether you're at home or you're at your business, office, or wherever you're at, and you absolutely find yourself overwhelmed because you look to the right and there's some papers over there and the items that have to be taken care of. You look to the left, you have some more papers that have to be taken care of. You look at your screen and you see so many unanswered emails that you have to answer. You just don't know where to start from. And when that happens, you could literally sit and kill a couple of hours not knowing what to do and where to start from. And you start with one thing, and before you finish it, no, there's more important stuff. So you turn to something else and you go back and forth like a ping pong, and it's absolutely disastrous. So here I'm giving you one tip, and then we're just going to continue working with the system of time management. See this here? A little piece of paper, just like that. Take a pen and write down on that little piece of paper 4 items to do right now. Don't think about prioritization, importance, urgency, none of that. Just write down whatever 4 items come to your mind, write down to do these 4 items and do them. The moment you do that, you have already taken yourself out of the position of being overwhelmed and starting to become in control. Because you realize you may have 20 items on the table. Okay, that's a lot of items. Or you may think it's a lot of items. You've done 4 items from A to Z. You completed, you answered a certain important email, you answered a certain letter, you sent out a certain check to a bill that had to be paid so you don't get fined with an additional expenses. You took care of 4 items. You can either start working systematically or take another piece of paper like this and write another 4 items. And before you know it and before you realize it, you are now taking control of what's happening with your time that day. So this is one tip I wanted to share with you, but we're going to continue going further to figure out all those items that we need to be able to specialize or master or at least understand what time management is all about in order to overcome all these items we've mentioned till now. The difficulty of meeting a deadline. Now, again, deadlines could be personal, family, organizational. A spouse can commit to do something by a certain time and it's not done. A colleague at work or a business partner or your boss or somebody working for you, it doesn't matter who it is or what it is, but there are deadlines and we don't necessarily always live up to those deadlines. And again, sometimes we start something and we almost finish, but we didn't finish yet. Priorities. That's a major part of time management. Prioritization. How do you prioritize? And how do you find yourself not spending a lot of time on priorities that are not really your priorities? They may be somebody else's priorities, but they're not your priorities. This is like very, very key, extremely crucial when it comes to time management. Because all of us are, I mean, we do things every day, but where is our time being spent? Okay. You could find yourself with a busy day. You did have a busy day. And you feel you worked hard, you did a lot. But then comes the evening, you say to yourself, so what did I do today? What did I accomplish? And this is following what we mentioned before, prioritization. Did I really live up to what I want to live up to? Did I really pursue those things that deep down is part of my priority? Whether consciously or subconsciously, we all live with prioritization. We're going to talk about that much later when it comes to the practicality. We all live with prioritization. We make quick decisions. The question is, are we making decisions with our stomach or with our head? Do we have a system in place within prioritization? So you could be busy a full day, but then you come say, so what did I really accomplish today? How many of you say to yourself, if I only had the time, I would what? Whatever. I'd have more time for myself. I'd be able to work out in the gym. I'd be able to have another kviyasit l'Torah. I'd be able to spend more time with my wife, more time with my kids. I'd be able to excel at my work, be able to make so much more money. I'd be able to do a whole bunch of things. And it's going back to the thing that we said earlier, I have no time. What do you mean you have no time? You're alive. As long as you're alive, you have time. But how many feel, if I only had the time, I would, da, da, da. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question. If we do this in person, I'd say, I want a commitment from you. and I still want that same commitment from you. I'm not going to hear you, but I still want that same commitment from you. I'm going to ask you a question, and the moment I'm finished with that question like that, I want an answer. Guys ready to do that? You can just shake your heads. I don't see anybody except for Dov. Oh, okay, guys are popping up here. Just shake your heads and tell me if you're willing to take my challenge. I'm going to ask you a question, and the moment I'm finished, quickly an answer. Are we ready? Yeah. Okay. I don't see anybody shaking their heads, but I hope you're accepting it. Up. Here we go, Zalmi. Great.
Maybe more people could turn on their screen. I think it would be
okay.
Great.
Here's the question. Here is the question. Who has more time, the kindergarten teacher or the kid in the kindergarten? Well, I obviously don't hear anybody, but I also don't see your lips moving saying that you gave the answer. Now, usually what happens is some guys will say the kid and some the teacher. No. Nobody has more or less time. The kid being born right now in a hospital in Israel or in America has the same exact 24 hours as the nurse or the doctor who helped deliver the kid. Same time. Nobody has more or less time. So when we say who has more time, what we're really asking is, what we're really kind of referring to is who is utilizing their time more accurately, more worthwhile, who's maximizing their time, who's getting a lot more done in the time that's available to them. Obviously, a kindergarten teacher would be more than a kindergarten kid. Kindergarten principal of a whole bunch of small kindergartens, more than the kindergarten teacher. And the more you work your way up in position, the more your time has to be focused and maximized and make more use of your time. So it's all about the higher the position, the more important your time becomes in utilizing your time, because everybody's time is equally as important and everybody has the same exact amount of time. One of the things you guys may have heard already, it's a very common known professor comes into class one day with a big box and puts it on the table and starts putting in, big balls and fills it up and asks the students, okay, guys, is the box full? And they say, yep, box is full. He bends down and takes, ping pong balls, which are much smaller, and starts throwing them in. And, we have bigger balls. There's plenty space in between and they all start falling in. Is the box full now? Oh, absolutely. Bends down again and takes out marbles and starts filling up the marbles. Is the box full now? Oh, absolutely. Now it's absolutely full. Bends down and picks up sand, a sack of sand, and starts full. And now the box is finally really full. There are several key lessons to this exercise that this professor did. To begin with, if you're going to fill up your box with balls that are not yours, you're already losing most of your time. More importantly, because hopefully we're not at that level where you literally waste, put in things of your time that's taking away most of your time. More importantly, there is so much time that we do have and we could maximize. Unbelievable. I'm going to share with you two stories from the Rebbe over here. You've all heard about Arav Adin Steinsaltz Alav Shalom. He wrote to the Rebbe that he has 3 full-time jobs and a bunch of things to do in between. What could he cut and where should he cut? And the Rebbe's answer to him was, surprisingly, to add. Now, the Rebbe was extremely demanding, but the Rebbe was also very, very much down to earth. Very much down to earth. And when the Rebbe demanded something, it wasn't in worlds of Atzilus and going higher even. It was right here in this world with us. And he explains how he understood the Rebbe's answer and how he was actually able to do even more. I think this story is written in Telushkin's book, Rebbe. I remember telling it to my wife, and she tells me about a lady in Israel, a young Balas Tshuva, a mother of a bunch of little kids. She has a full-time job in the medical department, in the dietetic medical field. She's a young mother of a bunch of little kids. She's a Balas Tshuva. She wants to catch up on many years that she, didn't study anything about Yiddishkeit. So she writes to the Rebbe, what should she cut and where should she cut? And the Rebbe tells her to start working on a thesis about medicine, about diet, something in the world of dietitian. And it was like overwhelming. She's reaching out to the Rebbe, saying how she's so overwhelmed, and the Rebbe saying, no, add something. And the reality is, all of us could literally double and maybe triple and even quadruple our daily productivity. If we learn how to do it right, we could literally double, triple, and maybe even quadruple our productivity. Okay, now comes another question. How much time do you have? We already determined before everybody has 24 hours a day. So what do we mean by how much time do you have? I'm going to add one word between the word much and time. I'm going to stick in one additional word there. How much available time do you have? How much available time do you have? Let me clarify that. If you're a teacher and you have to appear every day in school, say 8:30 till 1:30, just throwing out those hours. Then from approximately 8 a.m., when you got to get ready to go to school, till when you come home from school, that's not your time anymore. That's not your available time. You're committed to somebody for those hours. If you work for a business company, high tech, any business operation you're into, and you have to put in from 9 to 5, you punch your clock 9 to 5, that's not available time to you anymore. That time belongs to somebody else. It's available to that somebody else, but that's not your time anymore. If you go to a shiur once a week, once a day, twice a week, then that hour and a half that you dedicate to that shiur, whether you're giving a shiur or listening to a shiur, it's not your time anymore. That's not available time anymore. That's booked time. If you take your kids to school every day, you transport them and pick them up, that's not your time anymore. So now we're beginning to realize, I don't really have much available time in my day. Obviously, the more you work up in position, as we spoke before about that kindergarten kid and kindergarten teacher, the more you work your way up in position, the more available time you want to have. Because
are we able to ask questions?
I said before, when I finish each section, I will open it up for questions, okay?
Shkoyach.
So when we talk about how much time do you have, how much available time do you have, that's the real question. Okay, so we pretty much concluded now section number 1, or part number 1, which was an overall introduction to the understanding, why do we need to spend our time in focusing and understanding what time management is all about and how we could reach a point of atzlacha b'zman, which ultimately means we can all become a lot more productive. I will open it up now to questions. So if you want to open up your mute and one guy at a time, ask a question. I'll just try to be focused with what we spoke about till now. No questions?
Why? Yeah, I have a question. I was just waiting. Why is the only focused on available time when the time, as you stated above, basically is not considered yours? technically maximizing your time should be utilizing it while you're doing anything in your 24 hours a day. Your sleeping is considered using your time, being with your kids is your time. Everything's part of your time and maximizing that space. Why isn't every single section a focus?
Okay. I fully agree with you. One has to maximize 24/7, or at least those hours that you're awake. Absolutely correct. But there's a very big difference between, if I use the example again, you're a teacher. During those hours that you're teaching, you have to maximize your time to what you're now committed to. But that's not your available time. You have no free choice about that time. You have free choice to be a better teacher. You have free choice to be a better worker. But you, during that time, cannot spend time and thinking about yourself or your family, or trying to create another business while you're doing that. You're now committed to somebody.
What if you're not a teacher or a worker?
So
what
then,
if you have no commitment to anyone or
then
anything?
you will
and your
continue
time is
listening
what
to
you create.
you will continue listening to the rest of the lecture today and figure out how you can maximize your time. All I did was made a differentiation between available time versus time that's already committed to somebody else.
Got it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I hope you guys are all alert, healthy, and well, and good. And
time, if I could ask, time that's committed to someone else from a 9-to-5 job, like you mentioned, is still time that you want to utilize.
You want to utilize that time
better
for what you're being paid for.
Correct.
If you're a salesman and you have to produce a certain amount of sales, or if you work in high tech and you have to sit with the computer and do whatever you got to do there, you are now committed to that person. Take a look at the Rambam, where the Rambam teaches us, learning from Yankov Avinu, how much he was dedicated to Lavan Arami, and how much he was dedicated to do the job. So yes, you have to maximize that time, but that's not your time. That's time that you are now committed to a job or to somebody else.
Time.
One last question on this section, and then we're going to be moving over to part number 2.
I see there's one in the chat.
I'm not looking at chat while I have my screen open and I see you guys here. So if you want to read the question in the chat, go ahead and do so.
Okay, it's not my question, but I'll read it. What if utilizing every single second is too much, maybe too calculated? Is it even healthy to not ever space out, let's say?
So first of all, whoever's asking this question, I want to compliment for asking this question now, because usually this question comes much later on. We haven't even begin to get into the nitty-gritty of how valuable every minute of our life is in our day-to-day. And usually that's where the question comes, hey, what are you turning me into a box and a square and limited where I can't breathe? I need more breathing space. So we'll get to that a little later. Okay, I hope part 1 or section 1 has pretty much been clear the importance of focusing and studying and maybe even mastering and conquering the concept of time management. Okay, now we're going to start section number 2. These are all sources from our own holy sources, which talk about time management. The Baal Shem Tov is given a Masudar. And I'll translate loosely to English. The Baal Shem Tov was a Masudar. Der Mazritcha, I'm talking about the Mazritcha Magid, hat medaktik given if Seder. He already, I don't know, I can say the word medaktik. He was already more focused and more. Maybe somebody wants to open up their mute and just say how would you translate the word medaktik of Seder. But anyway, und der Eltern Seder Rabbeinu Zocken hat gelernt Chassidim, sie sollen sein Mesudorim. Alter Rebbe also already taught Chassidim to be Mesudorim. So we see a escalation of the Baal Shem Tov, the Mazritcha Magid, and the Alter Rebbe teaching Chassidim how to be Mesudar. Where do we see this? We see this from the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim writings, letters, and in the Nigunim. And he gives an example. Those Chassidim that had a permanent time went to come to the Alter Rebbe, as we know in history that Each chassid had a specific designated time when he comes to the Alter Rebbe, for a Shabbos, for a Yom Tov, when he was able to come. You weren't able to change that time that was designated for you to come to the Alter Rebbe without getting permission. If you wanted to get a permission to change, not coming Shabbos Pashas Chaysara, but coming maybe Ba'aloischa, you have to have a reason for that. And the conclusion of this Hayyimim by Rebbe, referring to the Alter Rebbe, is given a vad miyuchad by vielen Seder HaChasidim, uberoishim Marilach Yarabenu. By the Alter Rebbe, there was a vad, a committee to direct Chassidim, and the head of this committee was the Alter Rebbe's brother, Rabbi Yehuda Leib. Und a besonder vad auf Anführen mit chassidische junge Leute uberoish Admor Emtzoi. And a separate vad, a separate committee for young light, like I take it most of you guys are all young light. So if I am to take this one hayyim yoim and sum it up to one word, and that one word would be Seder. We're seeing from here, starting from the Baal Shem Tov, all through, at least in this Hayyim Yom, the Mittler Rebbe, it's all about Seder. Seder is very, very much connected with the concept of Atzlacha B'Zman. When you have Atzlacha B'Zman, when you know how to manage your time, you are a lot more organized. You are a lot more Mesuda. Okay, now let's take a look from another source of ours. This is an introduction to the Sefer from the Tzemach Tzedek, Tzemach Tzedek v'Tnuos HaSkola. There it's written, Matzbi v'Sadr Mitzuyan, Hoy Hoy Kvei Krushas Admur, again referring to the Alter Rebbe, V'Shita Miyuchedes Hoysoloi Baskonos HaKlal. He had a very specific system, Shita, in community work. Lasis kol dover b'seiser ubesod. Do everything quietly with a secret. Verak elu shal yodom nasu advarim hoyodim. Is only those that they were part of what had to be accomplished. They knew exactly what had to be done, but otherwise it was all done very secretly. If you take a look at the third word over here, matzbi v'sadrin mitzuyan, there's an 8. What does it say in the Ha'oreh, in that Sefer in number 8? It says as follows. This is now the Tzemach Tzedek writing. Kishohayisi ben Sholish, when I was 3 years old, Hidrichani kvei krushas azmur, the Alter Rebbe, li yis mesudar. The Alter Rebbe taught me when I was 3 years old to be a mesudar. Ukishohayisi ben Chomish amarli, when I was 5 years old, the Alter Rebbe told me, shetzrichim liyageya, li yis mesudar yoiser mahayegiya li islam. You got to work harder to be a Mesudar than to work to be a Lamdan. And I'm sure all of you know how difficult it is to be a Lamdan, so now start multiplying it, how much more you have to work on becoming a Mesudar. Why is it so crucial? So he continues and explains. Ki ha-seder hu echad mi'ikri ha-yesoides. Seder, organization, is one of the main foundations, key foundations, b'kol inyonei haskola midas. Everything to deal with intellect and emotion, which comprises the person. We're comprised of intellect and emotion. Kocha hu kaisev libnoi kvei krush admur marash. That's all. This is what the Tzemach Tzedek writes to his son, the Rebbe Marash. So, if I were to take this one screen and put one word over it, one word, that word would be yegia, horavanya, working real hard. And this is already suggesting something on the outset. Time management is not something simple that you could study it and master it and you conquered it. It's a day-to-day life's struggle. And it's a very difficult and a very challenging struggle. And there are ups and downs, just like everything else in life has challenges and with ups and downs. So why are we spending all this time discussing it? Because we are going to try to arrive at a certain system which can help you implement a system which will help you maximize your time and get a lot more done. But this is serious avodah v'yagia gedula, very difficult work. Let's move along. Okay. This is Hayom Yom from Aleph Iyar, the second day of Rosh Chodesh year between Pesach and Shavuos of Sfiras Oimer. It says as follows. Men hat gesagt einmal von Taten, this is the Frierdiker Rebbe writing about his father, the Rebbe Rashab. It was once said by my father, Taten, when my father was there. In a Verbringen Sfirat in the Jorn Tafresh und Alten Gimel. This was during a Verbringen, so this is what was said. Dem alten Rebbe's Chassidim pflegen allemal zählen. The alte Rebbe's Chassidim used to always count. This is what was said in the presence of the Rebbe Rashab. Der Wort, this statement, this wording, that the alte Rebbe's Chassidim always used to count, is dem Taten sehr gefallen geworden. He really liked it. V'omar, and the Rebbe Rashab said as follows, Azoi is the inyan ha'aveda. This is the inyan of Aveda. What's the inyan of Aveda? This shows that was angezählte. Hours have to be counted. Then when your hours are counted, seinen gezählte, then your days are counted. As a sketa vekatog, when a day goes by, darf man wissen, was wird euch getan. What did you accomplish this day? Und was wird auf dann weiter? What are you going to want to accomplish the next day? And he concludes, Bichlal darf man sein, in general, we have to see to it, as der Morgen soll sein, als Sachshane wieder heint. The tomorrow should be a lot nicer than today. We're going to park over here because there are a bunch of interesting lessons we learned from here and the whole concept of time management. First of all, let's start with the end of line number 3. V'omar, the Rebbe Rashab says, Azoi zrin ha'aveda. Who's talking about Aveda over here? There was a statement made in the presence of the Rebbe Rashab that the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim used to count. So the Rebbe Rashab says hours have to be counted. When hours are counted, then days are counted. You got to see to it. Then when your day went by, you should know what you accomplished. Where does Aveda come in over here? Licha'ira. The word here, Azoi Zrin Aveda, follows the previous page we had. The Rebbe Rashab is saying that counting your hours and thus your days is Aveda. It's not an easy task. It's a serious Aveda. Now I want you to help me. And obviously I'm not going to wait for you to answer me, but answer yourself the following question. It says over here that in order to count your days, you have to count your hours. So I'm asking you, how do you count your hours? And you're going to answer by counting your minutes. And then I'm going to say, how do you count your minutes? And you're going to tell me by counting your seconds. Whoa. We're talking now about serious Aveda v'yagia gedola. Because what we're saying is, to count your days doesn't begin by hours. It begins by minutes and seconds. Ultimately, if you want to count full days, full hours, and get the full days, it begins with seconds, which leads to minutes, to hours, and eventually to days. That's serious Aveda. And that is what we mentioned earlier about filling in the box with the sand. There's so much time that goes to waste that if we only learn how to maximize that time, whoa, there's a tremendous amount of time that we could maximize and accomplish a lot more. He also says over here, when a day goes by, you have to see what you accomplished. What did you accomplish today? Now we know any measurement has to be against something. Is this light or is this heavy? Is this expensive or is this cheap? Is it tall or is it short? Relative to what? You always, to measure something, you got to measure something according to something else. Is it close or is it far? Relative to what? This l'chayda suggests that if you want to know at the end of the day, what did you accomplish today? It's not enough to sit down and say, okay, let's see what did I do today. I did this, that, and the other. And you write down a bunch of things what you did. And you say, bravo, I'm excited, I'm happy, I had a good day today. This l'chayda suggests that when you start your day, you got to have a plan for the day. What do I want to accomplish today? A whole list of things that you want to accomplish in your personal, family, organizational life. Comes the end of the day, you could now sit down and say, okay, how much of what I wanted to accomplish today did I get accomplished today? What did I accomplish today based on what I wanted to accomplish? So if you start your day without having a plan for the day, I'm talking about a written plan for the day, specific items you want to accomplish the day, then you're half lost already because you have no real direction. I mean, yeah, you may know you have a bunch of things you got to accomplish today, and sometimes some of the very important things you may remember, and sometimes you may find yourself, oh, I forgot something really important because you didn't bother writing it down. So this Yom Yom is already giving us a whole bunch of directives when it comes to time management. It's telling us, A, that we already said before, it's avodah, it's very challenging, very difficult. It's telling us we got to monitor our hours so we could monitor days. And it only follows that we also got to follow our minutes and seconds. And it's also telling us you got to have a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, then just sitting down at the end of the day and saying, what did I accomplish today? Write down some things you did doesn't really answer the question, what did I accomplish? To answer the question, what did I accomplish? L'choira must follow having a plan first. Okay, and this is going to be the last one when we talk about, as I said before, the kind of psychological, spiritual, emotional, intellectual aspect of time management. This is a real heavy Hayom Yom. It says like this: Ha'aveda hi b'chol odom lefi mahusei malosei. The service of a Jew is according to each person's essence and his talents. Mi sheyesh biyodei, anybody who has the talent, the ability, linkev margolius oililte shavonim toivus, he's able to put holes in pearls or polish diamonds. The oisik ba'avedas meleches afias lechem, and he's busy baking bread. And in the middle of moving dugmas calls up Aveda. This is also understood when it talks about Aveda. Hagam shehi, even though it baking bread is Aveda melocha hanitzreches b'ma'od, it's a very important Aveda. B'chol ze lachet yechoshev la'ishahu. It is considered a sin. Here, the word sin doesn't mean literally a sin. It means chison. What is this Hayom telling us? It says you could be busy, even a whole day. You're really busy. One second. Oh. Okay. This Hayom is telling us you could be very busy and really maximize your time. Comes the end of the day, you know what you did today? Lachet yechoshev. Why lachet yechoshev? Because what you were doing today is not for you. What you were busy with somebody else could do. You have much greater talents to do something much greater. I want to share this little episode that happened a number of years ago when I gave this same seminar to a group of people that are not yet frum. Maybe 15 couples in somebody's house in Yishuv Alona. It's not too far from Haifa. And I used all this material. I didn't change anything. All our materials, I had translated more into Hebrew, but it was all the same materials. When I finished, the owner of the house, that the host of this lecture, came over to me and says, I'm between jobs right now, and I was thinking of opening up a bakery shop. I think I can do a lot better than that. And Bepoil, he ended up doing something much, much better than that from this Hayom Yom. Well, what is this Hayom Yom telling us? It's a very, very both powerful and painful Hayom Yom. I want to share a story I had once with a shliach. Talking about what his daily schedule looks like. And he described the morning, davens, comes home, helps his wife get the kids ready to get them off to school. He takes, in Israel, most people don't have two cars. I mean, definitely within Chabad. And so he's a shliach. He takes his wife and children, takes them to school, and they get off and they go, and she teaches there. The kids study there until it's time to pick them up again. He comes back home and gets to work in the kitchen to wash the dishes, clean up the table, finishes the kitchen, sweeps and cleans up everything, goes to the bedrooms, makes the beds. Beautiful. Now, let me stop for a minute to pause. I don't want any of you to get me wrong. I strongly believe that a guy also has to help in his house, okay? Like somebody, this is what I heard, somebody once went by the Rebbe and he said he heard that it's a zgul of a shalom bayis, fold up the talis right away, Motzei Shabbos. And the Rebbe's response was something to the effect, yeah, and to roll up your sleeves and help your wife at home is definitely a zgul of shalom bayis, okay? So I do believe that husbands also have to take some part in helping, different chores in the house. But for a shliach to come home every day, and I asked him, how much time do you spend? Was it an hour and a half? I said, if you were to spend that 1 hour to hour and a half every morning just on fundraising, you would have plenty money to hire a goya to do what you're doing, not just for 1.5 hours, but for 3-4 hours each day. You would have a lot more money for the organization, and you'd be fulfilling your shlichus. For you to be in the kitchen and tidy up the kitchen and the whole house, that's, in my opinion, lachet yechoshev. It's an important thing that he's doing. And could be every once in a while there is place to spend an hour or two in doing that. But that's not on a day-to-day basis when you have talents and your job is someplace way bigger than that. That's not for you. So now if we sum up everything we said, it all begins with Seder, organization, which is synonymous with time management. It's all about Aveda v'Yegia Gedola. It's a very, very hard job. It's all about planning, and it's all about prioritization. Before we go to the next part, anybody has any questions on what we said now with these few sources that I just brought up over here? And incidentally, just recently, there was another Hayom Yom, again about time management. It's not just the time, but it's an inyan in life. Just, I think, a week and a half or two ago was another Hayom Yom about that. Okay, any questions about what we said till now?
Okay. Hi, Rabbi, I have a question. I know
Go ahead.
that screens are off, but there's also a lot of wives on here. And I think we all grew up with this amazing value that a woman's place is in the home, and being an Akaris Abayis is the biggest work that we could do. But I think your story is a perfect example of a challenge that a lot of us deal with, where if some of us went and got not even if it was super high paying, but just a job that would pay for housekeeping and babysitting, etc., and really help with financially with some important things that your family could really use, and really help with some other priorities. So it's just a thought that I had. I think maybe some other wives might be thinking the same thing as well. Because it seems like a sacrifice of time and talent sometimes, but it is a value at the end of the day.
So first of all, this is what you're raising now is more a discussion with a mashpia to figure out how much a wife should work and shouldn't work, and how much time she should spend outside the house and inside the house. The Rebbe was very, very, even though, you know, kol kvuda bas melech pnimo, which is all about sneeze, but the Rebbe was very, very much for women being active and being teachers and doing jobs. Like, you know, today's times are very different than what it used to be a long time ago. But I hope the wives that are on this session will also try to benefit from what we're talking about. So if you do have a job outside the house, you will also be able to maximize a lot more of your time after the session today. Any other questions on what we spoke about till now?
Can you explain what you said when you don't think men should be involved in an hour and a half of the house? I didn't understand that part.
You want to clarify exactly what you didn't understand?
Is that what you meant as a general klal, that men shouldn't be in their
No, no.
house for an hour and a half a day helping? I didn't.
No. 1 second. First of all, as we're going to see a little bit later on, I'm going to strongly suggest that men should be home with their wives and children. That's an absolute must. Not to take your wife and not to take your children for granted. You should spend quality time at home. I'm saying that a man shouldn't be spending 1.5 hours what a cleaning lady should be doing at home. That's what I said. And using the example of this particular shliach, I said he drops off his wife and kids at school, then he comes home and he becomes a cleaning lady for the next hour and a half every day. That's what I don't think is proper for a shliach to do.
Understood.
But a man should be home and should spend time with his family and his wife and children.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. A little separation between what we completed now until we come to the actual practicality. Let's first understand, what is it that we're looking to accomplish when we talk about time management? In one word, what are we looking to accomplish? So it's going to mean a few words, but it's the same concept. The few lines that are going to be popping up is all the same concept. Okay? Are you in control or are you being controlled? And say the same words, just a little bit different. Do you lead or are you led? And finally, do you act or react? I want to give one example that I usually give when it comes to talking with shluchim. And everybody could try to internalize this example in your own personal life, but here's how it goes. Shliach wakes up the day after Simchas Torah. After overcoming a hangover, another day, he says to himself, that's it. This coming summer, my day camp is going to be the most successful day camp ever before. Okay, that's exciting. That's good. There's not much you can do now about a day camp when it's 10 months later. But there are a few things you can do now which will already have a very, very strong positive effect later. You know what that is? Book now the best location you know in your community that you want your day camp to be. So you pick up the phone and you call the place that you want to rent for the summer and you say, yeah, I want to book your place for this coming July and August. Now? In October? Yeah, I want to book it now. Okay. I'll send you in a form, fill it out, send it back with a deposit. It's yours. Okay. You get it by mail or by fax. You fill it out, you send it back, you send a check, a couple $1,000 to make sure you have a deposit that was paid for. You now have the best location for camp that's going to make a serious difference. Okay. Number 2, you want to try to get the best head counselor you possibly can get. So you guys are all still young guys. Your wives know girls that are still in seminary or, upper grades, high school, early seminary. These are good girls, Sidisha girls, committed, dedicated, everything. Take one or two of these girls and book with them now and say, hey, you are going to be my head counselors. Don't take girls from seminary 3 or 4, because the chances are, we pray that they find a nice chus and get married, and then they're off to someplace. So, even though it can always happen with younger girls also. But in any event, you're going to try to book to get the best possible head staff you can get. There's not much more you can do at this point. Actually, you could. You could look at weekly newspapers and see where their businesses going out of sales, and you may be able to buy some good sports equipment and other stuff for camp, supplies, arts and crafts at a good price. Good. So you're planning for it. What you also do is you write down, this year I'm going to make sure to start my public relations very early on. So beginning of December, you're already preparing everything you need. Comes January, boom, you're all over the place. In social media, in print, in flyers, you're all over the place. And as time moves along, you now are going to have a very successful camp. You know why? Because you were in control of everything that happened over here. Let's now take a look at the flip side. Shliach wakes up the morning after Sudas Mashiach, and he's also scratching his head with overcoming a shtickle hangover. And the next day, I'm going to have this year the best summer camp I can have. Okay. First thing you do is need a good place. So he picks up the phone and calls that place that he knows is the best place. They say, sorry, it's already booked. You slam the phone. Ashgacha pratis. Okay. Now you call another place. And the next place is already booked. Again, Ashgacha pratis. Before you know it, you're spending a long time on trying to find a place. You're going to get a place, but it's far from any priority. And it's not necessarily going to cost you less, maybe even more, because you woke up very late. But now you're going to get at least the best head staff you can possibly get. And your wife tells you she's the best possible candidate. So your wife picks up the phone and calls the girl, I'm sorry, I'm already booked. Ashgacha pratis. And you begin blaming everything on Ashgacha pratis, when really, I don't know how true this is. I once heard that the Rebbe said to somebody, don't blame your batlonis on Ashgacha pratis. So this is the difference. Are you in control or are you being controlled? Incidentally, I can tell you, when we were in Shlichus and Tina for over 10 years, when we decided after the first maybe 2 or 3 years that we were going back to our families in Crown Heights for Pesach, when we made an active decision, the following Pesach, we are going to be home and make a public seder and invite people to our home for Pesach. That whole year, we were looking all the time, wherever there were, places that went out of business and they were selling dishes and pots and pans, we went to grab it. And we were able to stock up over a year. It was done over a long period of time, so we didn't have to dish out serious money, which we didn't have at the time. And we were able to get good quality stuff at a very, very good price. You are in control, as opposed to what's happening around you is on top of you. You are leading, you're not being led. You are acting, you're not reacting. This is the essence of time management. Management, in another word, is control. You want to have control over your time. And I want to go back to this for a second, because this is an example I gave earlier, not example. I gave you one tip, which I said we're not talking about tips, but this one tip helps you get back into control. It helps you take a handle and say, I am now in control of what's going to happen and what I got to do. I am leading what has to happen. Now the question becomes, how do we come in control over our time? This is the essence of the question. We are now entering the last and longest phase of this lecture, the practicality of time management. Oh. Okay. It may end up being 3 hours. I'm going to share with you now 4 key items of how to use your daily calendar effectively. I'm not suggesting what calendar to use or not to use, whether it's one of the old paper calendars or a Google calendar, or what I personally use is something called the Plan Plus calendar. I'm not discussing now what calendar to use. I'm discussing how you should use your calendar. And I'm going to guarantee you, if you follow the following 4 steps, you are going to be a lot more organized and have a lot more time, or when we already agreed, there is no more or less time, but you're going to be able to be a lot more productive within the time that's available to you by following these 4 steps. Ready? I almost don't see anybody, but I hope you guys are ready. Okay, good. 1, use one calendar, personal, family, and community only. You are not to have separate calendars, one calendar. Okay, sounds good, right? What's the chiddush? What's so new about this here? Well, I'm going to suggest that each one of you probably has 2, 5, 7, 10 different calendars. Ready? Okay. Your computer could be one calendar. Your phone could be a second calendar. Oh, no, they're synchronized. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Fine. So you have one calendar because the computer and your cell phone are synchronized. You do have in the kitchen a calendar wall on the refrigerator, like many do. You have an inbox and an outbox. They are like calendars. Because what does the word calendar mean? Calendar means something which is telling you what to do. That's the concept of a calendar. A calendar is like your compass. What do I need to do? So if you have an inbox and outbox, they're telling you, hey, take care of me. Some people put in their pockets over here, you know, that's part of a calendar. Some people in your car, not in the glove compartment, but between the two, front of the seats. There's a place there, you can put stuff. There's a bunch of zettelach over there. And then in your house, you may have a drawer to take care of mail that's coming in to deal with it. Each one of these items, in effect, represents a separate calendar. And then you may say, family is one thing, but business, community is a separate thing. And personally, for me, it's totally different. You can have more than one calendar, more than one active calendar. You're going to come onto head-on collisions all the time. Because your wife at home is going to book something on the calendar in the kitchen, or she's going to book something in her computerized, synchronized cell phone calendar, but it's not synchronized with you. And you're going to book for that same day evening something that's very important. And boy, there's going to be a head-on collision when the two of you find out you both have something very important that evening. Doesn't matter who's going to quote win or lose, you both lose out. Doesn't matter what you're ultimately going to be doing, it's not healthy. So you need one calendar which unites everything. Okay? Are we clear with that? Understood? One calendar. Now, I'm not suggesting that you can't have also papers. I mean, you get mail, even though today more and more is being turned into digital, even bills and receipts. But there are papers that you got to deal with. So it's okay to have a pile of papers as long as you know you have to deal with it and it's organized and it's not just piling up. But you have one calendar which is telling you what to do today. Let's move along to number 2. Write down everything that requires action. Ooh, now we're coming into a much more challenging item. Whatever you need to do, you should write down in your calendar. I'm not suggesting that if you did something and it wasn't recorded in your calendar, that you should quickly go write down what you did. No. That's not much relevant. I'm suggesting whatever needs to be done should go into your calendar. Look at your calendar like a budget, okay? If you create a family budget, how much money are we living on? How much money do I make? How much money does my wife make? How much money do we got to pay for rent / mortgage, utilities, car, food, and all other expenses for the children and the chinuchim. Now, just imagine creating a budget, but a couple of things you're leaving out of the budget. Then you're fooling yourself. That's not a budget. A budget has to include every single dollar that comes in and every single dollar that goes out. That's called creating a real budget. Because if you're going to create a budget and leave certain things out, then you are fooling yourself. That's the same thing with a calendar. You have X amount of time a day that's available to you. During that time, you are going to have to do a whole bunch of different things. So you want to know what you have to do. So right away, you got to start putting things into your calendar. You remembered you got to do something in 2, 3, 4, 5 days, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. Put it in your calendar right away. Whatever requires action must go into your calendar immediately. This already becomes a lot more challenging because this is suggesting, number one, that I got to be with my calendar 24/6 almost, or at least all those hours that I'm active. I got to have my calendar so I can immediately put in anything that I remember needs to be done. It means I got to be aware that I got to do something and therefore it has to be recorded. This becomes real heavy. Now something becomes even more challenging. It gets better as we go along. To work forward only. Let me explain that. What means working forward only? You decide to take this system and implement it to the fullest. And you get really busy and you say, okay, I'm starting to record everything that needs to be done. And before you know it, you may have 15, 20 items in a given day, which should be very standard, normal, typical, good. So you had 15 items for tomorrow, Wednesday. Comes Wednesday night, you take a look and you say, whoa, I did 15 items, 5 I didn't. You can't leave it in today's day because you're never going to go back to today's day. So you got to take these 5 items and transfer it into tomorrow or the next day. Okay. Before you know it, you have 25 items. And suddenly you didn't do 20 and left 5. You only did again 15 and left another 10 open. And before you know it, the list grows and grows and grows. And you say to yourself, forget it, the system just doesn't work. It's not realistic. Because if you're going to record everything you have to do, and you're not leaving it in today, because you're never going to go back to today. Today is gone. When today's day is over, today's day is gone. So you got to put it in tomorrow or the next day. You can say, oh, forget it. This system just doesn't work. It's maybe in theory, it's nice, but it doesn't really work. So let me tell you the options that it's available to you before you decide that the system doesn't work. Because this system is very, very rigid and requires an extraordinary amount of self-discipline. And we all know it's much easier to live, or at least we think it's easier to live with not having self-discipline. Oh, I'm a free man. So let's take a look at the options that you have now. Should you find this to be a serious problem, here are the options. Number 1, decide what you do not need to do. Lachet yechoshev. Take a much more serious look at where you're spending your time and say to yourself, you're doing good things, but this is not for you. Let somebody else deal with it. Now, this becomes, in and of itself, this becomes challenging. We very much don't want to say no to people. We want to be good to everybody, to family and friends and neighbors and schools. But you got to ultimately decide what's your prioritization. So it may be, to begin with, you may say to yourself, there are certain things you're just, this is just not for me anymore. Number 2, even if there are certain things that you still do have to deal with, Try to delegate your responsibility to others. I'll use a typical example with shluchim again. If a shliach is busy going out Friday and buying the food for a Shabbos Kiddush, I would label that as lachet yechoshev for the shliach. The job must get done, but my God, you can't get somebody else to make a shopping for the food that has to be done for Shabbos. So learn to delegate to somebody else. Now, sometimes delegation may be by volunteers. Sometimes delegation may be by financially paying for something, but you may want to delegate certain responsibilities. And finally, be more effective. You go shopping. You're a good husband. Your wife asks you to go shopping, so you go shopping. You know what you didn't do? You didn't write down everything she said you need to buy. You're gonna come home and she'll say, "Hey, where's the oil?" "Oh, right. I'm gonna go back and get the oil." You have to go to the post office and to the bank. They're not too far from each other. So you go to the post office, you come back home. Oh, you got to go to the bank now. Then you go back to the bank. And if you got to go shopping, then do already a few stores at the same time. That's called becoming more time effective. So implementing this system is going to start making you think, what should you not be doing, or what should you be delegating to somebody else, or how could you become a lot more effective with the time that you do have? Okay, so l'choira, we're okay. We have 3 key items: record everything that needs to be done, work forward, use one calendar only, record everything needs to be done, and work forward only. Now comes the punchline. And trust me, if you're going to implement just line 4 from this entire almost 3-hour session, it was worthwhile your time and my time to be together today, just implementing this one line. Ready? I hope you guys are screaming, yes! Okay. Here we go. Always, 6 words. Always record your next step immediately. And that is a shift of your mindset, and be ready to embrace change. And let me clarify this. This is the key to ultimately everything in order to be able to keep you in control. Example. You send an email to a friend, and again, it could be a friend, family, business, it doesn't matter, with a question, and you need an answer. It's Tuesday evening, you send an email to somebody, and you need an answer by Thursday evening, or by Thursday afternoon. You click to send, the email went out, and you immediately get to work on something else. Comes Thursday late afternoon, hey, he never responded to me. Now you're angry at him. Don't be angry at him. You know what you should have done? You should have immediately record your next step immediately. What's your next step? I go into my calendar, and if I sent the email Tuesday evening, I write down Thursday morning. Did I receive a response from Danny? Question mark. And if not, I say, Danny, you take the same email and forward it back to him. Danny, I sent you this email. Could you please respond? 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, you're in control. You're not going to get angry at Danny because he will respond to you. You know what else is going to happen? The next time you send an email to Danny, he'll take you more serious. You know why? Because you're serious. Because you have taken control. Another example. And this example is nothing more than a theoretical example. It never happened and never will happen with any of your kids. But here's a theoretical example. You're going to get a call one day from the teacher saying, "Ooh, your kid is very much misbehaving. Something is just going through this kid's mind. Something must have changed. What's going on?" Now, you're a good parent, so you take the time to talk to the teacher, to investigate, and to thoroughly understand what's going on. And with the teacher, you decide you'll take a couple of steps at home with your kid. The first thing, you'll talk to your kid. And you decide that in a week from now, you'll call the teacher to see how your kid is doing. You hung up the phone, and immediately there's another phone that came in. So you pick up the phone because it's almost like a mitzvah deraisa. When a phone rings, you got to pick it up. And there was another very important conversation. And before you know it, you have to go out of the house or out of the office. What didn't you record in your calendar? You didn't record two things. You didn't record to talk to your kid, and you didn't record to call the teacher in a week from now. And I come home that evening, you had a very exhausting day. Yeah, you remember teacher spoke to you, but not this evening. I just don't have the patience or energy for it. And the next day you completely forgot about it. A week goes by, you don't call the teacher. What is the teacher saying to himself? No wonder the kid is the way he is. Let me give another simple example. Okay, you have a family wedding coming up. You want to be dressed like a mensch. Okay. You want to give in a dress, a suit to the cleaners, a shirt. You want to put in the cleaners. Okay. Cleaners closes 5 p.m. You gave him the clothing Monday morning. The wedding is Wednesday evening. You know what you didn't write down? Pick up cleaners. 10 to 5. I gotta get the cleaners. Ain't gonna run out. It's gonna be shut. This one element, always record your next step immediately. Again, it seems like something simple, but it requires extraordinary discipline. And more than everything else, it requires a change in our mindset. We are accustomed to run, always run, which is good. Action, do, act, good. But do things right. Every conversation, every email, every WhatsApp, whatever you do, before you go to the next item, stop and ask yourself one question. What do I have to do to pursue what I want to pursue? You bump into somebody, I'd love to have you over for Shabbos. You guys should really come over to us for Shabbos. Yeah, okay, fine. You come back home. You know what you're not doing now? You're not recording your calendar to make sure to put down to invite them for a Shabbos and actually pursue it further. And the list goes on and on and on and on. So start working with this system. I mean, we're not done yet. This is one part of it, because we still got to talk about planning and prioritization, and then we can put it all together. But this is key to everything. Your calendar is your daily compass to know what you got to do. I want to stop here for 1 minute and clarify something. We are not talking about a to-do list. None of you should have a to-do list. And let me explain how that doesn't contradict what I just said over here. Usually to-do lists are lists that you have in one place, everything I want to do. And from here, you take things that you're going to do from this list. Here's what happens if you take the to-do list serious. You start putting in everything you want to do, and the list grows. It was a long, long list. And every day you go up and down and up and down. You know what that list does to you? It puts you in yi'ush. You just pick up your hands and say, forget it. It's impossible. I'm suggesting you have a daily to-do list. What am I going to do today? What am I going to do tomorrow? It's a daily to-do list, not a running to-do list. A running to-do list shouldn't exist. You just thought of something you want to do, go put it in your calendar right away. Not today, do it tomorrow. Not tomorrow, do it the next week. Or decide that it's not for you to do. Don't have a running to-do list, but do have a today to-do list. Okay. Now we're going to start talking about planning. Because in order for our daily calendar to be filled with what we want, we got to do planning. So what are we planning about? Okay. Here are 3 key elements we must take into consideration when planning. Number 1 is personal, physical, health, spiritual, learning, prayer, and more. It's about you. You, the individual, you, the husband, you, the wife. It's your personal life that you have to have your own goals and set for your life. What is it that you want to accomplish in your personal life? Then we have family. families, education, economics, relationships, and more. When you think about planning, you can't just think about yourself and about your job or your community. You have a family. And you can't ignore the family. And finally, you have an organization. Again, I use the word organization in a very general sense. It could be a shlichus, it could be a business, it could be an entrepreneur, it could be starting your own, but it doesn't matter. So when you're planning, you cannot think of one or two of these items without all three. If you ignore number one, you will find yourself eventually empty and very unfulfilled. Yes, you're having a beautiful family, and yes, you're Baruch Hashem being matzliach business, but where are you? That's going to come haunting on you. And if you think about yourself without your family, it's definitely going to backfire. And if you think about yourself and family without planning, must take all this into consideration. Okay? So now, when we have a better understanding what planning should take into consideration when you plan, now we're going to come to the most difficult aspect called setting priorities. Okay. There are 3 levels in prioritization. 3. Number 1 is called vital. Okay? You know what vital means? If any of you ever studied anything about first aid, first responders, Hatzola, when there's, God forbid, an accident or something happened, the first thing you do is to check the vital signs of that person. Is that person still alive? Vital means you can't live without it. I'd love for all the guys to open up your screens, because I want to ask a question and I want you to raise your hands. Okay? Guys are ready? Well, just see a few guys here. Nobody's joining my additional invitation. Okay, but answer yourself the following question that I'm going to ask. Is chitas vital? I see 2 hands going up. Is Rambam vital? Is davening 3 times a day with a minyan vital? Okay. And if you raise your hand at any of those things, I'm going to ask the following question. Did you have to catch up on chitas in the last week or 2 or month? Did you have to catch up on your Rambam the last week or 2 or month? And by the way, it's the same question for the women. Is brachas, saying brachas in the morning vital, or some basic prayers women also have to do vital or not? What are we really saying? I can ask the next question. Is being a Beinani vital? Yeah, of course. That's what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. You got to be a Beinani. That's what our jobs are all, that's what our lives are all about. But I suspect we're not yet close to being Beinanis. And we may have challenges with what we think is vital, which really is vital. But here's what we're really saying. What is going to become vital in your life? What's going to be an active decision to say, this is vital? And the world can go upside down, and I may have days that I'm on the top and days that I'm on the bottom, but this one item, I'm not foregoing it. Vital is in your personal life, in your organizational life, in your family life, and your organizational life. What is vital in your family? You are now all young guys and young ladies. You're in Mirz Hashem going to be raising healthy families, and the more the merrier. Ken Yirbu. You have a bunch of kids in Mirz Hashem. You're going to want to raise a good, healthy family. What's vital? Sometimes the husband comes from one background which says, midos are the most important thing. That's vital. And your spouse, the wife, she comes from a background that says, cleanliness, that's absolutely vital. Now, you never have a discussion about it. You know what you guys are going to have plenty times? Head-on decisions, head-on collisions, I meant to say. You know why? Because you never made a decision. What should be the vital in our family as we raise our children? So vital means you are going to make an active decision that something, at least one, not more than two items in your personal life will become vital. One or not more than two items in your family life are going to be vital. And the same thing in your business or organization or whatever you're up to in community life. Once you determine vital, there are things that are very important. Things that are very important. But now there's a distinction between A and B. If one day everything seems smooth and fine and suddenly you get a call, hey, I'm sorry, I'm making a bris this morning. I really want to, I hope you can make it. Well, please notify. And it's a real good friend and he apologizes for not letting, boom, you lost now 2 hours of your day. Or unfortunately, there's the funeral, you lost another 2 hours of your day. You may not get to do those very important items, but you're not giving up on the vital. Because the vital is what you determined is going to make you in your personal life grow and make progress. It's what's going to make your family stable over years, that the kids are going to get a healthy, stable education because they all know what's vital in the family. And those things are not going to be compromised. Very important, yes. Again, very important, should not be compromised on a regular basis. But if you have a clash between the two, then vital takes prioritization. And the last item is important. Some things are important. Some things are very important, and very few things are vital. So now, how do we put this whole thing together? We heard about prioritization. We have a general idea what prioritization is all about. We understand that when we're planning our day, and not just day, but our kind of future, we want to have in our personal life 1 or 2 vitals and a number of very important, and maybe some important. We want to do the same thing in our family life, our organization, and all this gets eventually put into the calendar. How do we begin this whole process? Here's how it goes. How to begin the process. Thought. It's going to be machshava, dibur, ma'aseh. I'm going to suggest to each and every single one of you, separately and individually, not husband and wife together, separately and individually, sit down, give yourself an hour, no computer, no cell phone, lock yourself up in a room, and write down what is it that you would want in your personal life, in your family life, and in your organizational life. Now, as we said before, we are, thank God, educated to move and be active and accomplish and do. That list is going to be very big in all areas, because you really want a lot for yourself. You really want a lot for your family. And you really want a lot for your organization. But the list that you put together is kind of not realistic. And how do you know what should really be the vital item and what should be the very important, what should be important? After you finish the first process, which I label it as machshavah, it's between you and yourself. Yes, you're putting it on paper, you're putting it in a Word document or any type of document, but it's you yourself. You have determined what it is that you would like in all 3 areas. Then you now have to go to speech, dibur. The Rebbe says, asay l'chorav. Go to somebody who should be your mashpia and say, listen, I seem like a fine guy. I seem like even a Chassidish guy. I seem like quite a religious guy. But you know what? I'm very, very challenged with a whole bunch of different things. And a whole bunch of different things is like a roller coaster. It goes up and down. Sometimes I'm on the up and sometimes I'm on the down. And Chitas, Rambam, davening 3 times with a minyan, and a bunch of different things is sometimes yes, sometimes no. It fluctuates. I want to get my life together, my act together. So you're asking Mashpia, what should one thing be in my life vital? Or at least, let's say, for this coming year. So you mashpia may start interrogating you where you're up to, and you may say, you know what? Just decide to do Tanya every day. That should be your vital. Chumash and Tehillim, very important. Rambam, very important. But you know what? Do one item. Or maybe you're at a level where all of Chitas is vital and the Rambam, or the other way around. It's irrelevant what it's going to be. What is relevant is that something should be there. That's what's relevant. Because just imagine that you will take one item of vital in your personal life and come back to your mashpia 1 year later and say, wow, I actually lived up to this whole year. Now you add another vital to your life. You know what that does to you? Eventually you'll become a lot more of a human being in a chassid, the way you're supposed to be. Now the same thing is with your family. Sit down with your wife and have a discussion. What should be vital in our family? Cleanliness, midos, chassidus, religion, education, there's a whole list of things that you can decide what should be vital and what should be very important, what should be important, but make it a joint active decision and then live up to it. Once you do that, then your education becomes a systematic education. You know, sometimes you're going to forego unimportant and even very important, but not vital. Vital doesn't get bumped away. And finally, act. What's meant act? Use your calendar. Once you have your vital lined up and your very important and important in all three areas of life, whatever you're going to put in your calendar, right away write down, is this an A, a B, or a C? A is vital, B is very important, and C is important. Incidentally, I don't know how many guys on the Zoom now are familiar with what used to be an excellent, probably the best paper calendar called Daytimer. Excellent, I mean, phenomenal. Today, there is a digital calendar, very similar or almost identical to that calendar online. I personally use it. It's called Plan Plus. Right? It's a Plan Plus calendar. It enables you to have the tasks of the day for today, not a running to-do list. It enables you to write down, is this A1, A2, a B1, B3, B, whatever those numbers are. And what's nice, the computer automatically, the calendar automatically sets, if it's an A, it bumps it up on the top. So when you start a day, you have your A's on the top. And you say, wow, now I get to work on the A's, and then the B's, and then the C's. So even though you did not get all things accomplished, and you may still have 20 items that you originally started out with, and you only did 10 or 15, but you did do those A's and maybe even most of the B's. So yes, you're losing out on some important items, but you are pursuing that which is vital in your personal life, family life, and organizational life. And let me finish with one last thing from the Rebbe, and then I'm going to open it up for questions, because I take it that this last aspect is the most cooking, most challenging of all. This is a letter of Tofshin Yud Beis. The Rebbe writes like this: apparently, somebody writes to the Rebbe based on what it says in Geras HaTshuva, that for different things we have done wrong, we have to fast different amount of Tainesim. So apparently, this guy is writing to the Rebbe, I have no koyach to fast. I'm going to stop over here for a minute and explain the story over there. It was a chassid of the Rebbe Marash that went into the Rebbe Marash asking a tikkun for something. So the Rebbe Marash tells him to fast 300 days consecutively. So the guy was like shocked. How could you fast 300 days? So the Rebbe Marash tells him in Yechides, and this is the continuation of this, what the Rebbe is bringing here, Latsum, to fast, Eina Kavone, We're not talking about not eating from the morning till night. No. That means dieting. That's what we're talking about. Tainis hi aveda. Tainis means aveda. And what does that mean? Tachshev kol yom 15 dakos. Think every single day 15 minutes, but simas lev from, I guess, soul searching, or ishi salat. Think about yourself 15 minutes every day. Seeing Kwei Kedushas, he changed himself not just in the koiches, but in the essence. And the conclusion is you got to think about yourself every day 15 minutes. Now, I'm not sure, maybe you can ask your mashpia what means to think about yourself 15 minutes a day. But I can tell you, spend every day 15 minutes on your calendar. Either in the morning when you wake up, before you start your day, or at night when you go to sleep. Prepare the next day, analyze your calendar. Study everything that's written in your calendar. What is an A and what is a B and what is a C? And if you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 A's, which is a 1, which is a B, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. And then what are those B's and what are those C's? And when you start your day with such a beautiful, crystallized, clear compass, you're about to conquer the day and accomplish more than you ever would have accomplished otherwise. But now I want to share something with you that happened less than 4 weeks ago. I was invited to give a full-day seminar in Moscow to about 25 shluchim of Moscow. It was right after the massacre that happened in Israel and Simchas Torah. And missiles were already coming into Israel, and then it was a lot of missiles. So 2 times a day you have to run to the shelter, 3 times a day. It was a disaster. I told Moscow, I said, hey guys, if you want me to come, it's 2 tickets, me and my wife. I'm not asking for more money, but 2 tickets, okay? They paid another $1,600 for another ticket so my wife and I could come. And I gave this, one of the sessions was time management. And I concluded with something that one of the shluchim comes over to me later saying, why did you have to throw that in? Like everything was perfect until you threw that in. You threw that in. Whoa, who asked you to throw that in? What did I throw in that got him so shaken up and excited? And I mean, he was saying it kind of in a sarcastic way, but to every sarcasm, there's some truth involved over there. I finished by saying the following. There was a guy that was in Yechidus, and the Rebbe demanded something from him. He was in the academic world, and the Rebbe wanted some things from him, and there was not enough time for everything. And the Rebbe speaks about being a Masuda. And the Rebbe brings the Tzemach Tzedek as an example. The Tzemach Tzedek was asked, how are you able to write so much and still have such a huge chassidus? How did you do it all? Tzemach Tzedek said, I was a Masuda. And the Rebbe clarifies how Masuda the Tzemach Tzedek was, that if he was in middle writing, he had time that he would write every day. If that time finished, even if it was in the middle of a sentence, the middle of Inyan, he would stop. Then the Rebbe says, how do you become a Masuda? Got to daven every morning shachris with a minyan. The Rebbe says the shachris morning with a minyan is similar to Rosh Hashanah. It's a foundation of the year. The shachris in the morning with a minyan is the Rosh Hashanah of the day. It's a foundation of the day. You start the day with davening shachris with a minyan. Your day is mit Hent and Fis. It's a solid day. The shliach who complained later tells me, I don't know, I come every morning to shul, like 3 hours, I turn around with my talis and feel I still did nothing. So to him, it was a complete shakeup. And being that Mrs. Kugel, Rebbitzin Kugel, Lou, that invited me, and she started this whole process. So I want to share a story that I was asked by one of the students in Tzfas when I gave this seminar. Girl raises her hand and says, can I ask you a personal question? I say, go ahead. Do you live this way? So I say, did you learn Tanya with your mashpia? Yeah. Did you get up to Perek Yud Daled? Okay. So a reminder, what does it say in Perek Yud Daled? Shekol Adam Yuchul Li is Beinani B'Kol Leisa B'Kol Shah. Every person could be a Beinani continuously, every hour, all the time. And the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain, even if your heart is pumping away with non-proper desires for Elam Hazin and Taivas Elam Hazin, you could be in control. I say to her, did you ask your mashpia, do you live this way? Now, I'm not ignoring the question. I'm trying to make a point. Whoever is going to learn and live more chassidus is going to stay away from things that keeps you away from being a Beinani. And whoever is going to live more the system of time management, you may not get to the full system. But the moment you're going to start implementing parts of it, aspects of it, becoming aware of what time is all about, becoming aware of the importance of time, becoming aware more of prioritization, starting to write down more things in your calendar, remembering those 6 words, always record your next step immediately. This is Aveda. That's what we started all the way to the beginning. This is Aveda. This is a day-to-day challenge which you have to work on. So I'm happy that I hope some guys are still here. I only see like two screens over here. I'm happy that you listened, and I hope that you'll take and walk away with things that we spoke about over here more seriously. And the fact that it's one community, one shul that listened to it together, you guys could make kind of chavrusas and discuss. So where are you up to? What did you actually accomplish? Did you do the first part of recording what you want from your personal family organization life? Did you already talk to your mashpia, your spouse, and other things? And there's certain things that are personally not about to share with anybody, but the concept, the goal, the direction, you can. Guys, I'm open for questions and answers.
Shkoyach. Question: you mentioned the importance about delegation. I know that for certain people and myself personally, I know I prefer to do things myself for various different reasons. How do you realize what's important to delegate and what not? Meaning, I know for myself, I feel that I would do it better if it's done myself, but that you end up taking on too much. Where do you draw the line?
It's a very, 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 very good question. No, it's a serious good question, because I'm going to elaborate on your question. To delegate it to somebody is going to take a lot of time to train that person what I want that person to do. And then after a while, that person may not be around anymore to continue doing it. So I got to delegate it to another person and just do it myself. So I'm going to first answer this question from the world of shlichus, and then we'll try to see how we can adapt it to your question here. I will tell a shliach, anything which is technical that could be done by somebody else should be done by somebody else. You did not go through 12 or 14 years of education and learning chassidus and everything you went through in order to push papers and do data entry and lick stamps and do all that kind of stuff. Somebody else could do that. You got to do what you were meant to do as a shliach. Now, in reality, it's the same with everybody's life. Every one of you, including you, Rabbi, says Rabbi Achiezer, you have certain talents that others don't. And you have things that you would like to pursue. So once you determine what it is that you really want to pursue in your life, then start thinking about a bunch of other things, get rid of them, or delegate it to somebody else, and have somebody else do it. Now, it's true. Incidentally, in delegating responsibilities, there's 9 steps you got to have to know how to delegate a responsibility. Not simple. Okay? But when you delegate a responsibility to somebody, it frees you up and frees you up with a lot of time. Now, again, delegating could be sometimes as a volunteer. Delegating could be you're hiring somebody. But I hope I answered your question at least briefly. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. When you said about the difference between a task list and the daily list, I didn't understand that.
Good. Task list, I'm referring to as a to-do list. There are places where you can write a to-do list, and that is a general to-do list. You keep on thinking of things you would like to do. You don't really have much time to do it now, so just put it in there. You want to, and that list grows and grows and grows and grows, and it because you're taking it serious, and everything you're thinking of what you'd like to do, something which sounds good, you want to do it, so you throw it in there. That list becomes eventually very depressing because it's a long list. You don't know where to start from, and there's no way you can accomplish it all. And every day you're going to go be up and down going that list. What should I do today from that list? That list should not be. You should have a to-do list for today. Going to sleep Tuesday night, you're going to wake up Wednesday morning, have a list for Wednesday. What should you accomplish on Wednesday? Have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 items that should be accomplished on Wednesday. And those items should be according to the prioritization that you already determined earlier. What is your priorities in personal, family, organizational? You then
What if you prioritize your to-do list on level 1 through 10?
You should prioritize that to-do list. Are you talking about the
You
long
said to get rid of a
to-do
to-do list. You said not to have a to-do list.
I said not to have a long running to-do list, but to have a daily to-do list, a today's to-do list. That is a difference. I am making a determination. I'm going to do these things today. Any other questions? You have to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Thank you. Do you find that people that follow your system at times get burnt out from the abundance of details? And what would be a good tip to, yeah.
Permit me to paraphrase your question and answer. Basically, what you're saying is this is time consuming. This system is time consuming. And I'm not just talking about getting the system to, jump starting the system. First, doing the machshava dibur maisa and getting that part together. But then after that, it's very time consuming. You're spending a lot of time with you. You're living with your calendar. You're spending a lot of time with you. You're recording and you're writing the next step. And they used to cut trees in the olden days, big fat trees. They used to cut them in the olden days. A long blade. At each end of the blade is a handle. And two people are standing, one holding the handle to the right, the other one holding the handle to the left, and they're schlepping back and forth, back and forth. That's how they used to cut trees in the olden days, correct? Comes by a third person, says, hey guys, I know what blades look like. Your blade is dull. And you're spending an extraordinary amount of time on cutting this tree that if you just sharpened the blade, it would go much, much, much easier and faster. And they're responding, no, we're busy working. And they keep on schlepping the blade back and forth. We all understand that guys are being very foolish. Take out the blade, go to town, go to a smith that does that kind of work, have the blade polished and go back and boom, the work is going to go much faster. It's the same thing over here. Yes, your calendar is time consuming. But you know what? The moment you will feel in control because you're living with the calendar and whatever you have to do is recorded and you're always recording your next step, you are in control. You automatically could double and triple and quadruple your productivity. Okay? By the way, ladies are also invited to ask questions if you have.
All right, I'll take the invite. 2 questions. First of all, where do projects fall into all of this? Like, I would like to do a project for the house or renovations. Like, do I have to schedule that for a day? That seems too serious. for a project. It's not a to-do, it's not an A, it's probably a Z. Like,
You said you had two questions. So project is number one, or that is the question? You want clarification?
No,
on
that's
project?
question number one. That's question number one.
Okay, so let me explain. Let's just say renovations, okay? Some people will live 10, 15 years with a goal to do renovations and never get it done because you never sat down to make it an active decision to do that. Any project should be broken up to pieces, okay? The first part of renovation is to figure out what you want to do, how much it's going to cost, where you're going to get the money from, what's going to be the prioritization within the renovation project. If you want to renovate a house, you're going to do one floor at a time. You're going to do the windows first of the whole house. Or break it up into pieces. But transform a goal and a vision into reality by making an active determination that it's going to be done. If you I got carried away. There was something that popped up on the screen, something about the host it, something there. Okay.
Sorry.
You know, when you talk about the project, again, let's get back. What is that project? Is it important? Is it very important? Is it vital? Let me share with you a shtickle story. I was by a shliach once, and the son of the shliach, who's also a shliach, was complaining to me, saying that his wife and some of the other daughter-in-laws don't like to come to my father-in-law. You know why? Because the house is 150 years old. The doors don't even close well. The bathroom isn't what it should be like. Encourage my father to spend $150,000 to redo the entire house so it becomes a nice place to live in. So now that older shliach, who was only in his maybe early 60s, upper 50s, to him, renovating that house is probably not a vital. But once he started to realize that his own children and grandchildren do not like to come to him, and if he wants them to come to him, he better renovate the house properly, then it becomes a vital. So first thing you got to do is make a decision. Is it a vital? Is it very important? Is it important? You may start out with something which is important, and then it becomes vital. And then any project could and should be chopped up to pieces. But those pieces should be put into the calendar.
The joy of the project.
I'm sorry?
Like it, a tiny bit, it takes away the joy of the project. It's not, I'm not even talking something as big as renovations. Let's say it's a scrapbook or family photos, something small.
Then just
dissecting it.
So first of all, you got to decide, is this vital, very important, or important? And even if it's only very important, block the time to make it happen. I want to share something with you. This story was told in public more than once by Branya Schaefer herself. I suspect some of you may know who I'm talking about. She's very into lectures on Taras HaMishpacha and couples and families. At least she was years ago. And she tells the following story. Says, one day, actually, I told my kids, tonight, I'm with you guys. And the kids were like thrilled. Wow. And they're cooking a supper together and they're excited and baking. And the family is really excited because finally she's home with the kids. In middle dinner, there's a doorbell. So her husband, Gedalia, goes to the door. There's a couple there, and they need to see her now. Gedalia tells his wife, she apologizes to her kids. She takes in the couple into her room, and she has an office where she does her counseling. She's there a long time with this couple. When she's done, the kids are already in bed and asleep. But there's a note on the table. One of the kids writes, you treat your children like strangers and strangers like your family, something to that effect. That's a very painful wake-up call. I remember, by the way, giving this seminar once, a shliach who already had married children got up and he said the following, and it wasn't a planned statement. It like came right out of his heart, and he said, when your children are young, they're running after you. When they grow older, you're running after them. If you are not there for them when they're running after you, don't expect them to be there when you run after them. That's another very deep and painful statement, but it's true. And that's why, talking about your project again, I don't think that being organized and planning and setting aside time for something takes away the excitement. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, there are sometimes things that you want to do spontaneous and something really creative. That there's place for that as well. But the more you will plan in advance, the more everybody will benefit. I'll take another 1 or 2 questions and we'll be finished with that.
Is multitasking not considered utilizing time properly?
Absolutely. You know why? Because you're everywhere and you're nowhere at the same time. And you will end up doing a bunch of things and leaving a bunch of tails behind you because you haven't completed, because before you did one thing, you did another thing. One of the most important things is to be extremely focused. Do one thing at a time and do it right. Now, I do know that there are plenty of ladies who will sit with a phone and fold laundry while they're missing a pot to cook over there. I raise my hands and I don't know how the ladies do it. But if you're asking me in general about multitasking, be focused on what you got to do and do it from A to Z, and then move along to the next item. One last question to tip it off.
I'm sure you touched on it, but I just wanted to see if you had any practical tips for procrastination. I'm sure that's an issue for a lot of people, and personally, and what would you recommend to, I know calendar obviously helps that, but sometimes you ignore the to-do list. So what are some tips for that?
Ooh, that's a good question. Not only is that a good question, that's almost $1 million question, because procrastination is a killer, and I don't have any solutions for that other than having a mashpia to be accountable to, or in general have accountability. One of the most difficult challenges of younger shluchim is accountability. Eventually, a shliach that's out there for a bunch of years already created a community, and the community is already demanding his time, so he's already busy. But when you start out a shlichus, nobody will know the difference if you worked a day, it didn't work a day, or you worked 3 days and didn't work 3 days. Nobody knows the difference. Nobody cares. And it really has to come in from deep internal, sincere commitment to your shlichus. Now, it's not just shlichus. It's everything in life. And you need an accountability partner. So when you're dealing with things at home, those family matters, your accountability partner is your wife, and she's your accountability partner. Together, you know both what you want to accomplish and what you want to do. So there is accountability. When you're at work, you have your accountability at work, at least to somebody. In your own personal life, it's a challenge. Accountability is procrastination is when there's much less accountability. To overcome procrastination, it requires self-discipline, and to help self-discipline, you find some type of an accountable partner. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to say goodbye to all of you. Thank you for listening, and maybe the next time I come to America and I'll be there for Crown for Shabbos, I'll come in and say l'chaim with you guys. Which doesn't happen too often.
Thank you very much. This was very
Thank you very much.
informative.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
By the way, I think also, I don't know, I just want to make sure that you know, I think every account that was logged on here was a couple. So you should know that your crowd was double.
First of all, to me, the crowd is one and every individual.
Right.
As the Rebbe told, I think, to Rabbi Yitzchak Groner from Australia. I think it was him, but if it's not, wasn't with him, it was somebody else. But somebody launched a big project for Tadas HaMishpacha.
Mm-hmm.
One lady showed up. It was really, and the Rebbe said something to the effect, how many mothers did Moshe Rabbeinu have? You know, it's one person. So if one guy on this session, guy, gal, will take this a little more serious and become a little more active and more productive in pursuing positive things in your life, in your personal family, then it was worth everything. Okay, let's hope and have a peace here in the Holy Land, and let's hope that all this is leading up to one thing, which is the imminent and immediate coming of Mashiach.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night, morning.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Shkoyach, David.
Pleasure.
Wait, we might have to stop recording it.
David.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm just gonna end it.
Wait.